Welcome back to Newsmaker Live, and thank you very much for staying tuned to the program. We're talking environmental health. Parker Ragnanan and Reynold Hewitt of the Ministry of Health are here with us. Interesting facts about rats, and I knew that rats were prolific breeders, but then I did not know that they were so prolific. And during the break we were discussing it. Interesting to know that a rat can produce up to 11 liters a year.
Yeah.
I mean, when you talk about litters, we're talking about little rats, and each one is like 8 little rats.
Mm-hmm.
So that means for the year they can produce, one rat can produce 88 offspring.
Yeah, that's correct.
So imagine you have 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My goodness, that is
More
disgusting.
than the population of St. Lucia. Now, you see, Clinton, there are 3 species of rats to think about. They have the Norway rat.
Right.
The
These are the big ones.
Yeah,
the
and they live in the
fat
drain.
ones that look like cats.
Yeah, they live in the drains. You have the mice, and you have the Rattus norvegicus. That's the roof rat. These 3 species. They are different in characteristics, the amount of food they eat, the amount of water they drink, and where they preference in habitats. The Rattus norvegicus, which lives in the roof, he will eat the coconuts, the mangoes. You know, their preferred food is cheese, but if they cannot get the cheese, they will adjust.
They'll substitute.
Rats,
Huh?
yeah, if you want to say that, they substitute, and they adjust fast to the environment. Whatever they find there, they will eat. If it's garbage, they will live off the garbage. Okay? It's whatever you provide them with. They're often referred to as domesticated animals. They live with you, they share their diseases with you. So whatever you put there for them, they're going to eat it. So they eat vegetables, they will eat your whatever you provide them with. The mice lives in the house. The mice do not take large portions of food. He or she will nibble everything in the building. They will not take lump sum compared to the Rattus norvegicus and the Norway rat.
So the rats take lump sum. They
Yes,
take
they
big
take
portions.
big portions. Now, if you have all this knowledge about the rats, you will know how to control them. The amount of food they eat, or the quantity of food consumed, tells you the size of the population. All right. And that's before baiting. You're going to pre-bait them to know what's the size of the population. Depending on that size of the size of the population, you now know that you need to set a lot of rat bait. That's there. The quantity of water they drink. On average, a rat will consume 1 ounce of water per day. Okay. You eliminate the water, you may control it, you can give it the water in the sense, okay, let's say you set your bait. You have to eliminate all food source, water and other food, for the rat to consume the bait. They're very smart creatures. If they see a strange object, they are not going to approach the object right away. They may send a pilot rat out to test the new subject that is in the room.
So they send in a dummy.
Yeah, okay. And if that pilot dies, they know they're not supposed to interfere with that new object.
Interesting.
That's why we go through it's a scientific process. We go through a stage in order to eliminate the rats. We pre-bait, with food, and then we set the rodenticide to catch them. Okay.
I see.
So we know what they eat and what they drink. In the case where they're living in the trees now, it's a different approach there. Those in the house, a different approach. Those in the drain, we take a different approach for each of them. You have to understand these creatures in order to eliminate them.
Something I just wanted to add on that, and that is the feeding habit. Sometimes the tendency is that if you have a loaf on a table and you see a part of it is bitten, is eaten, that you think you can cut that part out and eat the balance of the bread. But what the rats actually do is they don't stay on one part of the table and bite one spot. They actually go on the bread, and they would be eating from one end. And another practice of theirs is that they would urinate and defecate whilst eating.
Yeah.
And that is what is dangerous, because the organism that causes leptospirosis is rarely found in the urine and in the feces of these rodents. And so we may have a false sense of security that, okay, we can cut out that part that is bitten, and the other part is wholesome and safe for consumption. And that is where we make the mistake. And we want to tell the people of St. Lucia that if you have bread or any other product that you suspect may have been interfed with rodents, and you find that there's gnawing signs on your bags and so forth, you should discard the entire product. Don't risk it. It's too much for you to play with your health.
That is so disgusting. That is so disgusting. What if, because sometimes you find, like, you know, you have bread, but it's in a plastic bag.
Yes.
Right? And there's a hole in the bag. It's not at one point. I mean, what would you say for that scenario?
To be safe, you leave out.
Yeah.
You're going to be handling this bread, this bag with your hands, and it's not all the time you're going to actually see the urine. You need to get the ultraviolet light and to be able to see what is there. Your naked eyes, you don't see the organisms, and so that is why we advise that anything that has been tampered with by rodents, you should not ingest these products. It is very, very important. The other thing that they do is the teeth grows extremely long, 2 to 3 inches. So that is why they keep on
2 to 3 inches.
Yes.
Yeah. They don't break.
That is why they need to continue gnawing to really file the teeth
File it
down.
down.
Yes.
2 to 3 inches.
Yes.
Wow. But not at any one point.
No, it's over their life.
For their life.
Okay, so they file it down to keep it to a manageable length.
Yes, yes. So that's why you find that they would gnaw at anything, wires and wood, and sometimes under your door you'd see gnawing signs. They try to bite everything so that they can file down their teeth and keep it manageable. So these are all interesting things about rodents.
Wow.
Yeah. And they're nocturnal. They come out in the night and they do what they have to do. You're asleep, sound asleep, and they're in the kitchen having a party, okay, having a feast. And that's where the contamination takes place. You get up in the morning, you're hungry, whatever is there, you're going to consume it. But you need to be observant. It's bitten, Mr. Ragnanan said, you throw it out. Do not take any chances.
Now, let's go back to the eating establishments, and I want to focus a bit on that before we start taking calls. You know, a lot of people eat out, you know, and especially now since our schedules have become so hectic and we have become so busy, we can't cook at home anymore. So we spend a lot of time eating out. Have you got a lot of complaints from the public about contamination in food? And what is your first response when you get such complaints?
When it rains, it pours. So within the last month, 3 weeks or so, we've received a significant number of complaints with regards to several sources of contaminants in the food products. What we do is, like I've said, many times we are not in a position to verify that this was actually found in the food or it was placed there by malice. But whatever complaint we receive from the public, we respond to these complaints. We treat them as authentic complaints. We would get the information as to the food establishment from which the product was purchased. We have to get information as to the dates, the time, and then we go there and carry out a thorough investigation. The officers would go to that establishment and to conduct an investigation, do a thorough inspection. For example, if somebody complained about finding rodent dropping in a product, we would have to go there and meticulously determine whether there are rodents present at that establishment to be able to determine whether that is a possibility. Further, our inspections include an element of giving information. We don't just go and write. We explain things. We discuss things to proprietors. We let them know where they are falling short and what they need to do. So every inspection and investigation that is conducted is followed up with a report, a written report. There are times where we have found establishments to be wanting. They have fallen way below the acceptable public health standards. And when that happens, we would recommend for closure. There are times where we have found that there are violations, but they can be managed, and what we would do is to allow a certain amount of time within which to implement recommendations and remedial works and upgrade their sanitation. There are times where we find that the establishment is at an optimum, operating at an optimum standard, and therefore we encourage them to keep up the good work that they're doing. So you find different factors and different conditions as part of your inspections.
But you don't have very many businesses being closed down, and you said in the last 3 weeks you have received a plethora of complaints, probably because people are taking the lead from what they have seen. They say, you know what, I have a problem, let me report it, as opposed to them being concerned and say, oh, I got this in this plate of food, or I saw this, I'll just throw it out and not eat there again, or buy something else.
Just let me say, Clinton, the primary business of the Ministry of Health is not putting people out of business, but it's to help people to do what they're doing better and in a healthy manner. And that is what we try to do with the persons who are in the food industry, from all levels, from the hotels way down to the street food vendor. We all want to ensure that people are in business, but they are doing it right. And that is our business. We use an inspection system which is based on a demerit score sheet. So when we go out to the inspection, we go with a very clear level mind that you are at 100%. Your establishment is operating at 100%. As we carry the inspection, when we find violations, and where the violations are found, there are grades per violation, and therefore we begin to deduct. The Public Health Board has set an 80% benchmark as an acceptable level within which establishment should operate. Once you go below the 80% grade mark, the red flag is signaled. You need to decide on the best course of actions. Further, there are some very critical violations. You may be at operating at 95%, and there is a critical violation that may even warrant foreclosure. But that being said, we try to help establishments attain a 80% grade at which they can operate. And hence the reason when we do a first inspection, we generally allow a period of time, maybe 15 days, 21 days, depending on the nature of the findings, within which establishments can implement, because we make recommendations and we discuss these recommendations, and we tell them this is what they need to do. And very often what we find is that they do pay heed to the recommendations.
What about repeat offenders, people who time and again, they probably take the recommendations, make the improvements, and then a few months down the line go back to the same practices, put the public's health at risk? How do you deal with them? Do you recommend for them to be closed permanently, or do you still try to work with them to ensure that they meet the standards?
Yeah, we don't recommend for permanent closure. We recommend for closure until they have implemented recommendations, corrected the problems to meet the satisfactory standards. But further, one of the things that we're doing presently, and we've recognized that there is some limitations with our legislation. Our Public Health Food Safety Act has been in existence from 1980, and we've seen a significant increase in food businesses since. What we've done is we've actually looked at new legislation, and that is currently before the Attorney General's office for approval. And part of that new legislation is that there's going to be a ticketing system based on violation. So if we come to your establishment and we realize that there is a critical violation there, right on the spot, we can implement a fine for that. Further, we are looking at having the food business become more self-regulated and not being policed. That is where the world is going. There is what is called the HACCP system, which is hazard analysis critical control point. And therefore, it means that we become regulators and people have to put systems and procedures in place. And what we do is we audit the systems and procedures, because this is where we want to go. We want to move from just the sanitation part, because we're stuck just dealing with sanitation. But we need to look at good manufacturing practice. We need to look at sanitation, standard sanitary operating procedures. We need to look at also quality control systems. And therefore, that is where HACCP comes into the food business. And that is where we want to go as a country. And I also believe that this is where CARICOM wants to go also, because we're looking at harmonized legislation across the English-speaking CARICOM countries.
Well, we're due for a break right now. We're speaking here with Parker Ragnanan, Senior Environmental Health Officer, and Reynold Hewitt, Program Manager in the Vector Control Unit of the Ministry of Health. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll take your calls for our two guests. Ask them what you want about environmental health and probably share some of the concerns that you have as well. Stay with us. Newsmaker Live will continue right after this.